It's said that communication and compassion are key to successful relationships, and no one knows that more than Chris Plutte. One of the original founders of the international nonprofit Global Nomads Group, his organization works to foster dialogue and understanding among the world's youth. Global Nomads empowers students worldwide using classroom curriculum and innovative technologies to serve as a driving force for awareness, breaking the barriers of cultural misconceptions and providing a heightened appreciation and comprehension of the world. I sat down with Chris at the Aspen Ideas Festival to talk about the challenges of bringing people together and the importance of cross-cultural exchange, connection, and global student engagement, not only to benefit education, but for diplomacy and the global economy as well. Education and travel are kind of combined in what you do, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But I want to talk about Bosnia, because it's not a place that something you've gone on to, and yet it was a place you were taken to through the stories from somebody else. So talk to me about that, because that again also leads this pathway to where you are today.
Sure. So I had in college, I didn't go to school in America. I went to school in France. It's the American University of Paris, and when I was in school there, my best friend, he was a UN peacekeeper, and it was around the conflict in Bosnia, and he was also Swedish, and he would share stories, not in detail, because I think they're very personal stories, but I had a sense of what that conflict was like by being friends with him, and I think it's just kind of a way of, as an American living in Paris with a Swedish friend and learning about the conflict in Bosnia, for me, that got me very excited about learning.
I see ideas a lot of times as seeds. You plant them, you water them, you nurture them. The initial stages, did you see when you started this, the vision of what you see today? Did you see that? Could you clearly see it? Or were there fits and starts along the way?
There were certainly fits and starts along the way. I think something that I'm very proud of is the mission of our organization hasn't changed. It's to foster dialogue and understanding amongst the world's youth, and it just hasn't changed. So our ethos as an organization has always been there, and I think will continue to be there. I think when we started the organization, it was a nice thing to have, a nice thing for students to be able to be global citizens. I don't even know if they used that word then. Now I'm at a place where I think that it is critical that every young person has a meaningful cross-cultural exchange as part of their education, and that those exchanges develop global citizenship, that those are skills and tools that are needed for everyone right now if we're going to be successful as, in humanity.
How do you define a global citizen, and how important is it? How important is it today? How important is it 10 years from now?
So we defined a global citizen who is, aware, curious, and looking to take action in their own way, however they define that at a global scale.
It's remarkable, though. I've seen some of the clips online where a child in Rwanda can talk about the genocide, and a child in the United States who may never be exposed to it is exposed to it in a much different way than in a book, much more visceral, much more impactful. Talk to us about some of the things you've seen that, put a smile on your face at the end of the day.
Yeah, a smile on my face.
Or bring tears to your eyes is probably better.
Tears often. We just, as an organization, we went where we thought there were stories that needed to be heard to the American young people. So if you look at our work, we were in Iraq under Saddam Hussein's regime, and we were linking students in Iraq with students in the United States. Nobody was talking to each other then. So the fact that we were making these video links between these young people was pretty extraordinary. And I know, because I know those same students today, that they had a different experience living through that war, as an American and as an Iraqi, because they had humanized each other prior to the conflict starting. And we've seen extraordinary results of our programs where people are willing to engage with people who are different than them, curious, feeling responsible to share what they've learned from different conflicts with larger communities, with their families, with their friends. We were in Darfur. We've been in Somalia. We've been in Afghanistan, Pakistan. We've gone to places where most people don't go, but where we've identified places that we can actually take technology and create connections and create conversations that otherwise wouldn't be had, and where we think these conversations are so critical to break down stereotypes, and in a small way, contribute to world peace.
How does it change these kids? Because it's interesting, the dialogue that's going on, but they're saying stuff afterwards, like, "Oh my God, I never had any idea." What are some of the things you hear afterwards from these kids?
It really, we hear a bunch of things. We hear young people who are curious to travel themselves. We hear about how they have empathy and compassion for people who are different, being willing to engage with people in their community that they didn't engage with in the past, and to at times enter a conversation and correct people on social issues that they've learned about firsthand. So I think that's what we see. And I think something recently that I've seen, which I'm really excited about, is how we were focusing a lot of our work in rural America, and to see young students there become global citizens and not have to leave their community. I think we see a brain drain in rural communities, and I think programs like Global Nomads Group contribute to more of a brain gain with 21st century workforce readiness skills, so that they can compete and work with people from different countries and cultures. That's something I'm really proud about as well.
So overhearing this conversation, getting involved, diving in, creating this business, moving forward with it, you have to be forward thinking. And I know virtual reality is now a piece of this. Talk to me about that.
Sure. I think we as an organization are really focusing on what comes out of this. After you've participated in a program, what's the results, and how are you becoming a global citizen, and what is a global citizen? That's what we're really focused on, and then we design based from that. So we have been experimenting with virtual reality and blending virtual reality with virtual exchanges, and we design a lot of curriculum, and we have other tools in which we activate so that young people can become global citizens. And virtual reality is a pretty extraordinary tool. So we've been focusing a lot on the Syria conflict or crisis specifically, and blending virtual reality where students in the United States have been able to walk in the shoes of a young Syrian refugee, and then we connect them with Syrian refugees who are living either in Lebanon or Jordan to talk about the conflict. But from what we find a lot in the States is the conflicts in the Middle East or in that region, they get muddled for Americans. It's all just kind of one big mess. For a lot of people see it that way, but it's not. It's very different. There's very different things going on there, and I think through our programs, by blending virtual reality and virtual exchanges, we're able to give students a real insight on what's happening in that region. And I should also say, it's not just one way. I'm sharing you very much through an American lens. Our work looks very different in the Middle East, but I would like to think that it's just as powerful and meaningful for those students as it is for the American students.
Let's dive into your head for a minute, because I'm wondering how you think each day. Is it part we got to focus on virtual reality, we've got to do this and that with this technology, or is it equal parts that and you're devouring the newspaper, oh, this is a horrible place, something terrible is going on there, wouldn't it be great if these kids could learn what life is like for I mean, is it equal parts, or how does each day shape up?
I mean, I spend a lot of my time thinking about how this can be the norm for every American young person. You know, when I think about the future, I want to see a day that every 10th grader in the state of Kentucky is linked to a 10th grader in Cairo, Egypt for a 12-week program developing global citizenship. Like, that's what I want to see. So I spend a lot of my time trying to figure out how to do that. You know, how do you get into educational systems, and how do you advocate and get superintendents and principals and teachers to realize how important this is, and to give them the tools to be successful in teaching students these power skills of global citizenship.
And the interesting thing is that 10th grader could one day be the ambassador and have a much deeper understanding of Cairo, Egypt. Let me talk to you about Search for Common Ground, your experience with that, and how did that help shape who you are today?
Right. Search for Common Ground is a conflict transformation organization. I think probably one of the larger organizations in the world that does conflict transformation work. And I had the chance to work with them for 2 years. I led their Rwanda office and then worked on programming in the region between Burundi and Congo. I'm a huge fan of their work. I think it is so critically important to give folks tools on how to mitigate conflicts nonviolently. You know, and it was an interesting place to work. Rwanda post-genocide, there's lots of regional conflicts. I really can't speak highly enough about the organization. Another thing I think I've learned from Search is how important it is to involve the local communities in which you're working. You know, when I was at Search in Rwanda, I was, I think, the only international on my team. You know, it was about it being Rwandan led and driven, and you know, I have so much respect that is a core value of Search's work.
Young people are communicating with each other, and a lot of these issues stem from a lack of communication, a lack of understanding people in different shoes in different places in the world. If people have a dialogue and a better understanding of somebody who lives in another part of the world, maybe those stereotypes that we have start to crumble.
Yeah, no, I certainly believe that. You know, I mean, what we're doing it's not really brain science. You know, like it's we've been communicating forever as individuals, and you know, we live at this time where we can communicate with people not just in front of us, but people who live thousands of miles away. And I'm a true believer that programs like Global Nomads Group can develop empathy for people who are different than you. You know, I constantly thinking about what happened in Turkey. You know, the reaction that I heard when that bombing happened at the airport, I was crushed. You know, I was literally crushed when I heard that happen. And it's because I know I have Turkish friends. You know, people that I cared deeply for live in that country and could have been in harm's way. I don't know if I would have had that same reaction if I didn't have Turkish friends. You know, but I think programs like Global Nomads Group can develop these, you know, friends that you might not think that you would have in life, and through that making more compassionate and empathetic, and you know, and hopefully we can be just a bit more of a global tribe than individual tribes.
We'll leave it there. Chris, thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Coming up, the science and psychology that influence love and relationships.